Hello, guys. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on time of day you're watching this. This is Jeff with an O. I'm a poet, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the verses and the mission for 2026. Because one of the things I found last year was many of the goals I had at the start of the year I thought were ambitious and ended up being things that actually we were able to, or I was able to achieve with people's help naturally, honestly, with months to go in the year. And so something I've been asking myself is what can really help create a difference in the poetry community, not just in Columbus, not just where I am, but worldwide. And one of the things that I think continuously that we see is that poets are choosing not to put themselves in control of where their art can take them, and believing that has to be something that's pushed to the side, a hobby, not something that we can live off of. And the example I always point to is what other art form is doing this? When's the example I always give? When's the last time you saw a painting? Maybe it was in the lobby or the hotel. Maybe it was in your house, right? When's the last time you heard music? It's probably in the car that just drove down the street, right? When's the last time you saw a mural? When's the last time you saw a photograph? When's the last time you saw a sculpture? All and the answers to these questions are going to be it's all unprompted, right? You weren't like hunting these things. You encountered them on your own. And so then the question becomes without looking for it on its own, when was the last time you encountered a poem? And the answer for many people who aren't poets is they haven't. They haven't seen one since high school or college. I don't like that. And I think that poetry has a real ability to impact people and change people's lives. And if we think that we have a gift to change people's lives for the better, then I think it's our job to find ways to better other people's lives. And so today I'm going to be talking about the mission that I have for 2026 with the verses, talking about the thought process behind it, and then ways that if it's something that resonates with you, how you can get involved yourself. I call it the 2026 50,000. The basic premise of what I'm about to propose is that by the end of the year, I want to guide people to achieving $50,000 through poetry related offers, products, services, whatever it is. We're going to create them together. And by the end of the year, we're going to earn it together. And it's not about the money. The money is the least important part. It's about the belief that we are going to be able to use poetry as a vehicle to sustain ourselves creatively and financially. Thanks to Lynetta for hanging out with us. If you're hanging out with us too, feel free to say hey as we talk about things. If you have questions about things, if you have ideas about things, if you disagree about things, let's talk. That's what this is about. So let's talk about kind of what's going on, big picture. So what's our actual case? What's going on? And these are the slides. I've modified a bit for now, but these are slides that you can find on the socials too. Okay. The basic case right now is that poets are deferring. Poets are deferring to organizations like academia, and they're deferring to nonprofit. They're deferring to many different arts organizations and other forms of what I call corporate poetry in order to bring their art into the world. And the problem with that's not even necessarily a problem. But one problem potentially is that when you defer, then the people that you defer to become gatekeepers in a way, right? Because they become the judges of what work should be made more widely visible. And the other thing, too, from the perspective of the artist, is that it creates a mindset that I don't think is particularly healthy. It creates a mindset that the only audience for poets is poets. that the only way to create a livelihood around poetry is by not doing poetry, and that the only practical avenue for, creating a living around poetry is by being dependent on arts organizations and being dependent on grant funding and being dependent on stakeholders and being dependent on bosses and being dependent on donors and being dependent on editors and being dependent on judges instead of being dependent on ourselves. I think poets can be dependent on ourselves. Yeah. What's up, HH? We need to get out of the loop. 100%. That's what this is about. So the problem is that none of that is true. We're not dependent on any of those things. And we also need to think about, if we take part in the system, then we have to ask ourselves, at whose benefit is this happening for? The problem is that when we defer to these organizations, MFAs, academic departments, grants, nonprofits, all those journals, publications, and things like that, fellowships and publishers, when we defer to them for everything, then what we're doing is we are allowing ourselves to help their own survival more than our own. Because these organizations need poets. The reality is they need the poets and the artists more than the artists need them. But they have to convince us that it's the other way around. MFA programs need poets to think that MFA programs are necessary, right? Journals need poets to think that journals are necessary for getting work out, right? It works in our interest. And I'm not saying avoid these things. Use them. They can be really helpful. They're beneficial. They're not inherently evil or horrible or out to get us. That's not it. But they are complicit still in a system that is teaching us that this is the only path. That's what the problem is. The problem is that these are positioned in a way to get poets to honestly believe that this is the only way to make it work, instead of the reality that this is one way to get it work. So we need an alternative. The problem right now is kind of like they monopolize. MFAs need tuition. Journals need submission. Grant bodies need art to give awards to, right? Schools, if you're a professor or something like that, schools need you because they need people who can teach the stuff. But they need people who can teach based on conditions that they set. You have to be available at these hours. You have to teach at these times. If you're an adjunct, you can be here and get your like 19.5 hours, whatever keeps you below benefits, right? The publisher needs manuscripts. So how did these organizations get people to buy in? Well, they do it by giving poets status, or having poets think they give them status, right? How do they do that? Well, they have selection processes. They give you rejection letters. They have awards that they try to give the appearance of things being based on merit. And everything's based on scarcity. We have 10 awards. Our issue has spots for 30 poets, or maybe 10, maybe less than that. Maybe half the poets we actually put in are actually solicitations, but we don't tell you that, right? Everything's scarcity mindset. Why is it scarcity mindset? Because that's what creates tension, and that's what makes it enticing for people. Because, there's only 10 spots. Well, if I get one of those, then I can, hang that on my hat. I can put that on my resume. It makes me look good, right? Even though what it does is it creates a world where now poets are competing against poets. How does art compete against art? How does that even happen, right? It's subjective. The worth of art is very subjective. To some people, the Mona Lisa is worthless. Some people would be like, I wouldn't hang that anywhere in my house, right? But then other people are like, no, like this is an investment, right? to get buy-in, these organizations also, what are they doing? What's corporate poetry doing? Well, they need poets to believe that there are no alternatives. Because if there are alternatives, like if business works, business is a way to become independent on terms that we dictate, right? Which means that we no longer need them. Look at how a lot of nonprofits and things work, or arts organizations work. They'll do workshops. They'll do workshops on craft things. They'll do workshops on grant writing. I was looking at an arts organization's website, a big one in Columbus. What kind of things do they offer? They don't have anything on, creating a poetry offer. They don't have anything talking about social media marketing. They don't have anything talking about. I'm not a big proponent of focus groups, but how to create a focus group, how to create a poetry offer, how to do a sales pitch. They don't teach any of the things that businesses need. They don't teach you about performance indicators. They don't use any of that lexicon, but they will teach you about grants, and they will teach you about tax stuff. I'll give them that. Okay, they'll have workshops on some things related to make you better at your art, but not necessarily things on how to live on your art, right? One of my favorite experiences with a grant was this was back. I had started a poetry nonprofit, actually, ironically. This was a couple years ago, before the world changed dramatically. And originally, to start a nonprofit, you need money to pay the fees to start it, the legal fees and stuff, right? And you would think by starting another arts nonprofit, you'd be able to help more artists in the city. At least that was the thinking. But no, they will not give grant funding to create organizations that will help artists in the city. They will help you promote your own art, build your own art, but they won't help you help artists, which I thought was interesting. These organizations too, they need poets to doubt business. Business is a dirty word for a lot of people. They hear the word business and they cringe, right? And instead, what they do, if they can have negative associations made around the word business, then they can have poets competing with the limited resources that they offer. So I've been thinking a lot about this for a long time. If you guys have been following Diverses, I've been thinking about this. This is the solution I have. 2026, 50,000. And I need to preface this by saying there is a very real chance that this will not work. That it fails, that we don't get anywhere close to this, that I'm not able to find enough people to fill the cohorts, that not enough people believe in the mission. The chance for not working is very real. But that's the thing. At some point, we have to be willing to risk. We have to be willing to escape the comfort for the discomfort. Saying it's possible. I do think it's possible. I believe it's possible. But right now, I don't have the proof because I haven't done this yet. That's the point of a goal. What's the point of a goal that you're 100% sure you can hit? There's a lot of uncertainty. We need things that we're not sure about. We need to push. So this is what I'm pushing for. In 2026, I want to guide 3 small cohorts of poets who are interested in creating financial independence. So altogether, all the poets that we get involved, we're going to try to reach $50,000 in poetry-based offers, services, products, whatever it may be. Yeah. And I want to work with these cohorts for free, documenting the process along the way so that other people can do this on their own as well. The goal is I want to teach people to live on poetry. Not that we have to live on poetry. You don't have to. But I want you to know that it's possible too. Let's change the mindset around our art. So how's this going to work? There's a methodology I'm going to be using. Each cohort is going to be for 4 months, meeting once a week. I have some people from all over already expressing interest, which is exciting. For those of you who've done that already, thank you. Most likely for our online people, I will aim for the second cohort. The first cohort I'd like to have in person in Columbus. Okay, so if you're online, I would ask you to just hang tight. Okay. It's 4 months. Each month is a different module of about 4 weeks. Each module is focused on a different element that I believe is going to be necessary to create your poetry service or offer. Okay. 1 month is going to be dedicated to craft. Okay, so whatever discipline or art, again, we're aiming for poets, but it doesn't just have to be poets. But if it is poets, we're going to be focusing on craft, things like turns, stakes, form, imagery, analysis, being able to read work and have takeaways from it, just to improve our craft knowledge a little bit. Obviously, in 4 weeks, it's going to be hard to make all the changes or all the growth that we'd like to see, but it's going to give you the ideas of what to target moving forward, right? After that, the next month is going to be talking about communicating. We need to have a specific message for whatever the service or the product or the offer it is that we create. There has to be some sort of message, which means we need to be able to communicate it. I'm a communications coach, so I'm going to be teaching you a lot of things I teach my students. We're going to be learning how to talk, not to become invisible, because I think a lot of people, when they talk, they're trying to get the speaking out of the way. So we end up having these interactions with people that becomes very forgettable. Why are we going to talk to be forgotten? I'm going to teach you what are the ways that you can speak in a way that people remember, get drawn to you, and want to share what you say with others. So we're going to talk about some techniques with our voice, with our body, with our presence. The next thing, cultivate. I'm a big believer that tying in education to whatever it is that we create can be very, very valuable. Education helps people achieve what they want. And that's the thing about business. One of the things I tell people that I really have found to be true with business and creating a poetry business. One thing I do with my communication students is I actively try to incorporate poetry into what I do. And if you have questions about that, feel free to ask me. I try to talk about it a lot on the channel, things like that. Because I'm a big believer that, hey, if we say something, then let's at least demonstrate that we're also doing it too. Let's not just talk, right? Through education, I'm going to teach you some keys to educate. How do you talk to people whether you're doing speaking from a stage, whether you're in a workshop, whether you're in a classroom, whether you're facilitating? What are some key concepts that we need to understand in order to put people in the best position to take what we say and learn from it? The last month is a module based around creating. If you're someone who is open to social media, we'll talk about some things that we need to create for social media. If you don't like video, but you like audio, we can talk about some things we can do with that, like podcasting. If you don't like that, you like writing, then we can talk about some things we can do with writing. But basically, we need to have information. We need to become findable. And so we're going to talk about ways that people can actually find us and hear our unique message that we want to bring into the world. I will say that our cohort is going to have access to everything I have. So if you don't know, what I have in Columbus is I have Columbus's first and only, currently, poetry dedicated venue. It's not done through grants. It's not done through nonprofits or philanthropy. It's just me putting my own skin in the game. It's a business expense. Okay. Everything I have there, my microphones, my cameras, the space itself for hosting events and workshops and things like that, everything that I have is going to be available for members of our cohort because we got to get stuff out, you know? Thanks to Lynetta. So everything I have is for you. I'm in case you don't get, I'm trying to put you in the best position to succeed. Because if you can succeed, how many other people are going to be able to succeed? You know, if we just need the proof. We just got to prove to people what can happen. That's what this is about. Let's just change the mindset, how people perceive how poetry works. Everything I have, I'm giving to you guys, people who are in the cohort, so that way we can make things work. We can bring about change. My goal is to try to have these cohorts up and running because I don't have a lot of time. We have less than 12 months. We literally have less than 12 months right now, right? Because this has to be over by December 31st, 2026. This is for my goal. So I want to get this rolling by the end of January. So if you're someone that you're like, I can get going soon and I would like to be part of this, please reach out. Some of you already have. Again, I really appreciate that. We'll get mapping. We'll go through the 4 modules. By the end of the 4 modules, I can't guarantee that you're going to have everything you need to necessarily start bringing in income, but at least it's going to give you the tools that if you continue working on those 4 modules, you're going to have something that you can present to the world, and the world can either work with it, accept it, or not. Because that's basically what I'm asking us to do. At the end of the day, I think business, when you link it with art, is the way of taking your art and making it altruistic. Instead of creating the art for the self, you're finding ways to take the art and make it of value to other people on terms that they need and to solve their problems and to give them what they want instead of making art for what I want. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. So, but all this is just for the people who are like, I want to make a livelihood around art. That's not everybody. Not everyone wants to do that. Some people want to keep poetry to the side. Cool. Nothing wrong with that. Keep playing the traditional things by all means. This is for the people that are like, you know what? I think it would be kind of cool to full time be a poet, living on poetry things. If that sounds like you, then that's who this is for. If you have any questions or things like me, or any doubts, concerns, thoughts, I'm welcome to hearing them. But that's the big goal. Right now, I need the social proof. I believe this is true. I believe that I am sailing to an island and there is an island. If we can just get through all the fog, I think it's there. But it might not be. So I don't know. We're going to try to see if there actually is the island over there. If you want to come, get in touch. I'm forming the cohorts now. Lynette says it's for her. Let's get it, sis. Let's go. Yeah. A couple more people would be more than welcome, and then we'll get rolling. So then we can, again, the goal is to show people what's possible so then they can start understanding that, hey, maybe there are some alternative paths. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. That's what this is about. We're just trying to share what the message is. What's the mission for 2026? This is bigger than what I had last year. And last year, a big one for me was trying to create a poetry venue. It's funny. I had a conversation with, it was an online one through email, conversation with someone from an arts organization. They have like an event calendar, and they know I do a lot of events. And they told me that, oh, well, we can't put your events up on our calendar because it has to be through the venue. And that already is really telling, right? You have an arts organization that's telling an artist, we can't do something for you because we don't expect you to have your own venue. The idea of a poet having a poetry venue was just so absurd. That's part of the motivation why I wanted to try to get the poetry venue, the stanza up sooner. It's like the expectations for poets are so low. Like out of all the arts, like it's like the lowest. Like people just don't think anything. People hear poet and they think poor. They feel like they misheard you. And I'm very tired of that mindset. So if that resonates with you, thank you for stopping by. See you down the road. If any of what I'm saying resonates with you, it'd be great to work with you on the cohort. Let me know if you would prefer to be online or in person. If you're in person, most likely would be meeting on a Monday or a Thursday in the evening, probably around 6 p.m. Yeah, that's the time I'm thinking about right now. Although I'm open to playing around with times, but that's what I'm thinking about right now. We'd be meeting at my venue on the west side at the Stanza. It's at 15 North Westmore. Question here from See You Down the Road. Is the instant validation trap affecting the art? Can you elaborate on that? I'll speak to it, but I want to make sure I'm interpreting it the way you're interpreting it. Okay. I think artists right now, I think part of the reason why artists are very dependent on our traditional means of arting, of like our journals, our publications, our applying for grants and things like that, is one of the things I mentioned. The arts organizations and things, the way they operate right now is, let me take a step back. When we do something or when we get something or when we pay for something or when we apply for something, there's an expectation that we're doing this to get something back. You know, if I take the fruit off the tree, I'm doing it because I'm hungry and I think it will give me food, right? Um, and so what do arts organizations and things do? Well, first of all, they offer some things like money, so you can money to pursue your art. And then the other thing they typically offer is they offer status, because then you can put on your resume like, oh look, I won this award. Oh look, I did this thing. Look at me. It's something you can add to your credentials. Artists have been taught to look for those sorts of credentials and things like that. And in fact, this is one of the difficulties that the Verses has, is that by teaching poets to be independent and operating on our own, we're inherently taking away some of those kind of like golden cows. You know, we're taking away the symbols of status because you're earning it on your own. In fact, that's one of the things with like self-publishing, right? A lot of people look down on self-publishing. That's changing, thankfully, but a lot of people treat self-publishing as like, oh well, you know, no one vetted it and things like that. And people view the art as being of less quality. But we kind of misunderstand quality, right? Because at the end of the day, the artist doesn't determine the quality of their work or the worth of the work or the value of the work. It's the person who takes it in, right? There's poets out there. Have you ever seen a poet on a stage and you're like, oh man, how'd they get on the stage? I write better poetry than them. I do better art than them. How did they get the award? I'm better than them. Well, it all depends on the audience. The audience that made that decision, they're the ones that determines the worth. You know, like I wouldn't pay a brain surgeon a penny today. A brain surgeon, they perform, one of the most important surgeries of all time. They are worthless to me. I wouldn't pay them a penny today. Right? Everything's dependent on like situations and value and context. So for us, that's really helpful because I just need to make art that is of value and of worth and that gives to the right person. And this is why there is no real competition in art, because the person my art's for, it doesn't have to be the same person your art's for. In fact, this is something we're talking about. So we have a book club called the Creative Companionship that meets on Thursdays. And one of the book we're reading right now is Zag by Marty Neumeier. And this is something that he talks about a lot, is that the minute that there's competition, we need to run away. Don't walk away, run. Go to where there is no competition. And this is something that we're going to be talking a lot about in the cohort. We're going to be creating poetry offers that are so unique to us that our poetry isn't competing against other poets, because no other poet's doing what we're doing. No other poet's doing what we're doing. And so we can use that to our advantage. Okay. But the problem is that I can't give you the signs of status and the badges and the credentials that the traditional means have, because you have to do it on your own. And that's going to be a real challenge, because right now the poetry system is very much built on those sorts of credentials. Do you have the MFA? Do you have the publication at this spot? If you're in the slam scene, are you getting the random score. You know what I mean? And things like that. So it's going to be challenging. And that's why we need the cohort, because the cohort is going to be the social proof to say, hey, okay, we didn't win that award because we didn't apply for the award. In fact, earned enough. I earned the same amount of money you got from your award through poetry. Earned the same amount. But the best part, when you're actually able to earn it on your own, this is why it's better. When you win an award, the award runs out. If you earn the income through your art, you can earn it again and again and again and again. It doesn't run out ever. And the best part is whatever you create from it stays created. If it's through a book, the book gets created, and it's not like the book disappears. Grant money disappears, but the book doesn't disappear. This is what the cohort is going to allow us to do. We're going to create some things around our poetry and change people's lives in a way that they want. I could go on this for a long time, obviously. But that gives you a sense of what the cohort's about. What is the Versus 2026 50,000, what it's about. If you have more questions or things, or there are things I didn't quite get to, feel free to reach out, send me a message. But hey, thank you guys for your time. There is a lot of things going on in the world. There's a lot of things that are demanding of our attention. So the fact that you spent a little bit of time with me just talking about these things is something I really value. I hope you guys have a good day, have a good night, good afternoon. Enjoy your poetry. I hope to hear from you soon. You guys take care.